welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Google Drive and essentially how it can be used. Before we begin, you know the customaries, be sure to like and subscribe. Now, I've been asked to do a quick video on Google Drive, simply explaining what it is and its most effective use, right? Now, I do remember before we started using the cloud and before the cloud itself became prominent, I used to walk around with a flash drive. I was in school at the time and I would, plug my flash drive into the computer and I would do my work and I would, save and eject the flash drive and then I would go to my next location and I'd continue working from wherever I stopped. But sometimes if somebody passed by the machine I was using, they would accidentally hit against the machine. Sometimes the drive itself would break. Sometimes, the computer would crash. Sometimes I would forget the drive behind and I would lose my work, right? So essentially, we have been paying hefty sums to Microsoft for a very long time prior to the idea of, using a cloud-based version came about. And despite losing our work, despite computer crashing, Microsoft didn't really do anything about it. Along came Google, a very innovative company. And what Google said was, listen, let's afford, the users not a paid subscription to some service, although there is the means of you upgrading to get more space in Google Drive. But Google essentially said, you know what, let's give this service, let's create this virtual flash drive using the tenets of the cloud as we know it. And that way, as long as you're signed in to your email, you have access to Google Drive, which essentially is exactly that. It's the concept of a virtual flash drive. So you don't have to plug anything into the computer anymore. You simply sign into your email, and once you've signed in to your Gmail account, I should say, you have access to Google Drive, right? This virtual flash drive. And then within your virtual flash drive, you could do things like things that you used to do in Microsoft Word. You could create documents, for example. You could create a spreadsheet, some type of presentation format, and so forth and so on. And then Google, went one step further. They gave us the ability to create forms as well. All right. And I'll be talking about, essentially what Google Forms is and how you go about using Google Forms in another video. So be sure to check that out as well. All right. So essentially, Google Drive is very, very useful because it allows you to essentially, store your documents here within your Drive space. You could create folders. If you're somebody like me who is highly organized, then you would create folders for your different tasks, different types of tasks that you do. Maybe some are personal, maybe some are academic, maybe some are professional, and so forth and so on. And so you could create different folders, and then within those folders, you could essentially, do uh, the tasks that are pertaining to that particular folder. Now, here's where Google Drive is most effective, at least for me. I essentially love the fact that Google thought about practical uses of the tool. So, for many people who are using Google Drive, they don't want to just come to the web every single time they want to access Google Drive, right? And so what Google has done is afforded us the means of downloading Google Drive to our local machines. Here is mine, for example. If you're, using a workspace, it might be called FileStream or something else. But we're actually given an opportunity to work locally within Google Drive. And as we work locally, you can think about the Google Drive here as a flash drive you plugged into your computer, but it's downloaded locally. So you're not plugging in anything anymore. And as you create documents, I'll just open my drive here for a second. Here's my drive. As we create documents, and I'll create a sample document in my drive. Um, I'll just call it, my sample, my sample document, right? And I'll open my sample document and I'll simply type, this is my sample document for, I'll leave that error in there so you can see essentially how this works. So this is my sample document for Google Drive. So you'll see that it's the same document. And once I'm done, I close out. And of course, this is Microsoft Word, so I have to hit save. And to be fair, afterwards, Microsoft did up their program a little bit. They did come out with their version of Drive. They called it SkyDrive, but I think it's a little bit shameful that this company that has, been charging so much for so long, by the time they came out with their version that they called SkyDrive, another smaller company had that name, and so they had to change. Embarrassing. And so it's now called OneDrive, right? And so persons can now work from their OneDrive folders using Microsoft Office just the same as they can with Google Drive. But because Google is quite open and they're providing practical solutions for the user, you don't have to only use Google Docs. You can still use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, and any other files basically that you store within your Google Drive. Then once you're done, essentially, if you come back to your Google Drive space, and I'm using a different account with my Google Drive, so I'll go to that account now so you see what it looks like. So I'll just sign into that account and I'll bring it over here so you can see. So here is that account that essentially I use locally with Google Drive. And if you should look back at my drive here, you'll notice that it's essentially the same. I have a number of documents here I need to sort out. My classroom documents have been going to my main space for some reason, but you'll notice that it's the same documents that are here that are essentially here on the web. So if I'm at home and I'm working locally using Microsoft and everything else, videos, pictures, everything else that I use that I save within Google Drive, if I get elsewhere, then I have access to those. And you could choose to access this offline as well, so you don't have to be connected to the internet. But here is my sample document here. It's in the Google Drive space, but because I just did it, Google Drive is suggesting it as one of the documents that I might want to open when I access Google Drive, which is quite effective as well. And then when I do that, you'll see here that here is the document exactly as I had typed it, right? Google opens it for me as a Google document, right? And so it's a highly effective space because I no longer have to worry about just saving documents every single time, everywhere I am carrying those documents, uploading somewhere. Google takes care of that for me. So essentially, this is what Google Drive is, and this is how it works, and this is how it has been most effective for many users like myself. You'll also notice that if you open a Google document, if you create a Google document, you could create one from your Drive space, but unlike the prior versions of Word, here is where Microsoft had to also pick up their game, because everything you do within this document is going to be automatically saved to Drive. So you don't have to worry about saving consistently, hitting that save button. It is automatically saved. And then you have the ability to go back and change, uh, revert to a prior version. So if you open this document a year from now and you made some mistakes, you could revert to prior versions of that document. And of course, the big affordance that everyone loved is the fact that you can now share a document with someone and have both you and that person work on the document in real time, right? And so essentially, this is how Google Drive works. This is how it is most effective, and this is how you can go about using Google Drive for the most part, for your own deliberations and practices. So this was just a quick tutorial. If you want to download Google Drive, because I'm not saying that you have to use the local version, you could essentially use Google Drive from the web. And so if you wanted to essentially download and use it locally as well, Then you could, once you've signed in, you could simply go to your settings or gear icon here and hit get drive for desktop. Or you could simply, if you're using Chrome, you could simply in the URL search for, Google Drive download, and that will take you to Google Drive. My caps lock is on, but that will take you to a Drive download option. And of course, you have to be careful, because what Google does is, they give you this overall page that it doesn't take you to the download right away. So you have to look through, make sure you find the option you're looking for, and then download. If you're not downloading for an individual person, but for a company or for a client or something along those lines. All right. So that's it. That's how you would use Google Drive. That's how it has proved to be most effective for me, and might be most effective for you as well. All right. Be sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment below.